Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Dana Beirnes on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Vancouver, all the way up in Canada, where, we got another Canuck on the podcast, but she's here to share her health and fitness journey and, basically talk all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Dana, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, I got to ask, first of all, what is the weather like up in Vancouver right now?
It's actually beautiful out today. A little chilly, probably like 10 degrees, but just pure sun and blue sky.
I
So,
gotta remind everyone she's talking in Celsius. She's not talking in Fahrenheit, because if you're saying it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit out there and it's a nice day, I'd be like, okay, well, that's some seasonal depression that's like to the extreme right there. But yeah, so we have nice weather on both sides of the podcast right now, which is great. But before we make other people feel jealous, why don't you give us first of all your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're currently at right now?
yeah, well, I guess it all stems back to high school where I was always into team sports. I always played team sports. Growing up, I wasn't really into the gym scene in the high school. I played rugby and field hockey in grade 12, and then I played for BC for 2 years for rugby. And then I actually have a heart condition where my heart rate will, if I exceed my maximum adrenaline, it goes 200 beats, like 240 beats per minute. So team sports became a little bit of an issue for me, and I couldn't eventually do them anymore because I couldn't run. So then I just started going to the gym. For the first, I would say, 3 years, I had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely just went there, never went over a plate on any of my lifts because I didn't think I was strong enough. And then I went to a gym down in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, and a girl just asked me if I wanted to do a competition with her. And I had no idea what it entailed at all. I just agreed with it because I was bored and I wanted something, a goal. I always do better when I have a goal. So that's when my bodybuilding career kind of started, I guess, so to say.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the biggest myths and stereotypes that I love to bust on this podcast, and we'll bust it first off because we talked about it right before we started recording, is that, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram and stuff like that. But there's still so many women that have that fear that, if they even stare at a dumbbell, they're going to put on, 50 pounds of muscle. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I didn't think I had that fear at all. I was always kind of bigger than the rest of the girls muscle wise because of rugby. It's kind of a little bit more manly of a sport. So I never had the fear of that. And I never really thought I was that big either, which I think stems to this. But all the time I'll get girls saying, "Oh, they'll only work their glutes or their legs because they're like, I don't want to pick up a dumbbell and have big biceps because I think that loses my femininity." And I said, well, no matter what, it's taken me 4 years to get where I am today, and just because you pick up a dumbbell doesn't mean your biceps are going to blow up. So I said, and I think you can still be extremely feminine even if you have muscle. I think it makes you look more feminine. So
Well, absolutely. And again, if that person who is afraid of that, if that actually does happen to you, give me a call because I'll spend my entire life savings to train with you. Then you'll be the hottest commodity of all time. But one thing that I like to add on top of that is that, so many people just do not understand that the number one thing that impacts this lifestyle, I think the most positively for women, and it impacts men as well, but I think it's so much more prominent for women, is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. We have heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of how it's, helped boost, people's lives and stuff. And that's always that one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact, every single aspect of your life. How have you personally taken that confidence boost that working out's given you and use it to impact your life?
It's helped me in every aspect of my life. I used to have no backbone. I used to have zero confidence. As soon as I walked into the gym that I go to now, I hang my head low, and I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't feel like I was allowed to talk to anybody. And then as soon as I just started going and became part of that community in our gym, it's amazing the confidence boost you get from it, which also helps me at work, and makes me more able to talk to people at work and get out of my shell and have a little bit more of a backbone because I can hold myself higher. And even just having my coach always commented on my posture. He's like, "You shrug when you walk." He's like, "Just hold your shoulders back." And even just doing that makes it so much easier at work and just has that little bit of confidence that you need to get you through the day. So
Absolutely, and that's just a huge part of it as well. And when you were getting started, I mean, I love to make the analogy of if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, I mean, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down
Mhm.
to, I mean, their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. And what was that like for you, sort of realizing that, hey, if I were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what do you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them isn't going to work as good for you, and that there's just so much trial and error in this lifestyle.
Yeah, I feel like one thing I struggled with was how much lift I could actually or lift. Sorry, I had I was just staying at what I felt comfortable at. Even if I did my 12 to 15 reps, I would feel not tired or not exhausted afterwards. So I found out that really pushing myself to failure really helped me work on those body parts, and I couldn't always do what another person was doing because I've learned so much that I can't compare myself to other people because they may have a body part that they genetically just are insane at, and I may have a body part that, like, for me, my back, I am obsessed with my own back, and lots of people ask how I get that, and I think I just genetically had a great back to begin with, but just the like for me, rows really brought out my back, but necessarily might not work for someone else. But heavy rows really worked to bring up my upper back. So I feel like just figuring out the weight was a main thing for me and how much I could actually lift and how much I was actually stronger than I actually realized.
Yeah, that's a thing that we hear, especially for women too, and that's great that you were finally able to figure that out. But I also love to talk genetics on this podcast too, because so many people that are on social media, I hear this all the time, and I want to strangle them. Oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and people just do not understand that you can only be the best version of yourself. You don't know how that person got to that look. I mean, let's be honest, some people are just born genetically blessed where they have a 12 pack basically at birth, and it's just like, okay, screw you, I hate you, but whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion before it catches up to everything. What were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Well, definitely my back. That I think that's my number one go-to that I have. It's my favorite body part to work out as well. I love doing rows. I love everything to do with the back. Um, the one that I struggle with is my hamstrings. I don't know if they exist, but they're in there somewhere. But the back of my legs and the hamstrings and calves are the one thing that just as soon as I started bodybuilding, really seriously after my first competition, um, my lower body half had a hard time keeping up with my upper body half. I feel like my shoulders and my arms blew up, but my legs are kind of slow to keep up with the process. So it's definitely the hamstrings.
I mean, you got mine exactly. I mean, my back was the one thing that took off for me, but I'm also 6'3", so like you, my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot. Where I always make the joke I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they wouldn't even gain an ounce. And calf races I could do 10,000 a day and they wouldn't gain anything. So yeah, I totally understand you with that, and I love asking that question because I mean, it just proves that everyone's body is different, and you're not gonna get those same results as someone else, which I think so many newbies really tend to believe. But I mean, on top of this, there's just so much more of a mindset change, I think, than there is just the physical changes. This is so much more of a mental sport than the physical sport of it. But the only problem is that people are just going to notice your physical changes. They're going to say, Dana, you look amazing. They're not going to say, like, how have you changed mentally? But what has this mental journey been like for you? Because it's so much more impactful and important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the mental thing is one thing that's not really talked about enough. Because anyone can pick up weights and start going to the gym and eating properly, but the whole mental game that bodybuilding plays on you is such a mind game. The one thing I personally struggle with the most, and it kind of helps when you have a group of people who are doing one competition together. And the gym I go to, there's a handful of girls who are doing the competition, and I love when we can just all train together and it's like a healthy competition. But then you're able to talk with each other and not think that you're going completely nuts. And you look at yourself every day and you can't see the little changes that everyone else is seeing. So as much as everyone says, "Oh, Dana, you're looking really good," where I just looked in the mirror and been like, "I'm not seeing any changes for the past week. Why am I just staying the same?" I think that the mental aspect of it is huge, and I do think anyone can do a competition, and I think it's just good to have that support system. If you have a good support system where you can just talk to anyone, I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of support system too, what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced that you wanted to become a bodybuilder?
I don't know if they took me seriously at first. My first competition was 2 years ago, and I wasn't even sure myself if I would follow through with it. But as soon as I tell people that I'm going to do something, I usually do it. So my I think my family did have a hard time. Like my parents did have a hard time understanding it because they're used to me playing team sports and all the team activities where now it's an individual sport and I'm cutting, I look different, I put on so much muscle. I'm not the little girl running around on the rugby field anymore. So it was great. There was a couple that joined in when I did the competition as well. So and she's actually my roommate. We live together now. So my friends were a major, huge support system, and my aunt and uncle had actually bodybuilt in the past, so they knew all about it, and it was super easy. So um, it took them a bit to understand the process, and the eating. I think the eating was a bit because on holidays, bring out your little scale and you measure your food, and they just laugh at you. But in the end, they saw the hard work that it put through, and then as soon as you got on stage, they were just amazed. So
Well, and that's awesome because I mean that support is means so much to a lot of people, and it makes it so much easier when it comes down to the journey. But talking about preps, I mean, I've always made the comparison where 95% of the general public couldn't even get into the amount of shape that being on a prep would require because you got to be in shape before you lean down and cut off. But once you get on that prep, I mean, it's like you flip on a switch where, I mean, your diet has to be perfect. You got to get all your cardio done. You got to get the proper amount of sleep. You got to get, your nutrition's got to be perfect. You got to get all your workouts in. I mean, it just becomes so scientific and so extremely focused on. What is that like for you when you make that mental switch to a prep, and have preps gotten easier for you as your career's gone on?
um, I don't think it ever gets any easier. I was wishing for this one to start, and then as soon as it started, I was like, "Oh man, why did I wish for it to come so fast?" The hardest part for me is the diet. I love food so much that it's really hard to just stick with the same food day in and day out. But that's why I find having a routine just really helps. So when I work 7 to 4, it's perfect because I just bring my food that I'm supposed to eat. I eat it at work. I come home, go to the gym, and that having a routine helps immensely with prep. So that's good. And even my roommate, she eats the same way I eat, which I feel bad for her, but she knows what it's like to go through a prep, so it makes it a little bit easier.
That again, that support is just so great, and that you have a roommate that's willing to do that. But I mean, one of the things that isn't talked about as much as it should be is the nutrition, because I mean, it's 80 to 90% of the results that you see. And I mean, I still have friends who, God bless them to this day, they think that they can go at Burger King, like 2 or 3 times a week and still stay in shape. And it's like, yeah, because we're 25, call me in 10 years and then tell me what that's like. But what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you started, getting in shape? Because I mean, like you said, you had to put on a lot of muscle. And even right now, I mean, you still have to maintain a pretty big size.
Yeah, I think the first thing that it was weird from living at home and then moving out and then starting on prep. It was I was actually eating more. I wasn't used to eating as much meat and as frequently through the day, and I had never really before prep done protein shakes or protein powder or supplements or anything like that. So I think when my coach gave me my nutrition plan, I said, how am I supposed to lose weight when I'm eating so much? But then you start eating the protein, and you start like thinking about your cheat meals before they're like as soon as you finish your cheat meals. And I think that was the one shock to me was how much I had to eat because I wasn't eating enough before, and that's why I wasn't putting on that muscle mass before. So I think definitely the amount that I had to eat was the one main thing. And moving forward, and eating at the same time every day, that was another hard thing. I work in construction, so for me to drop everything and go eat a meal was really hard. So I had to make time for everything and schedule everything out and make sure I had all my food and make sure I was getting my water in and everything. So
Do you think that becoming a bodybuilder has helped you out in construction? Is everyone like, oh yeah, Dana's got this. Just let her. She can pick up that stuff. Just let her do her thing. Yeah.
yeah, usually most people don't know to the extent of how much I work out, especially in the winter time because then I wear hoodies. But as soon as it's summertime, everyone's a little bit shocked But definitely, they don't worry about me in construction at all. They're just like, "Nah, you got that. You can take care of it." So it definitely has helped out a lot.
Yeah, and I can't imagine, it being any different. But one of the things that I love to discuss as well is that it's the hardest thing for so many competitors, and I would have never guessed it in a million years, is posing. And I mean, people just don't understand how rough it is for people. And I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
As soon as I'm not a graceful person. So my coach always made the joke with me. He's like, "Stop moving like a truck." He said, "You just move like a truck. You need to be graceful." Um, I definitely think that besides nutrition, posing is one of the hardest things about bodybuilding. Um, Having to flex every single muscle in your body at the same time while standing there trying to smile and look like you're not doing anything is so hard. I don't even think real. I'm still learning every day on how to pose properly. Just little tweaks of how to hold your hands and stuff. After my first competition, I don't even think I actually knew how to pull my lats out properly. I think that actually just clued in probably a year ago, and it's just those little things that click. Like, you watch as many videos as you can, but until you find that one thing that really works for you, you're just the little game changers that help you, the cues that help you understand. Because I can nail a pose every time in the mirror, but as soon as you take that mirror away and you take pictures, you're like, why are my shoulders so high and stuff like that. So posing was probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn. And even I try to pose every day, even after cardio, as much as you're just standing there sweating. I don't think there's enough practice that you can get from posing. So,
Absolutely. And out of your poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
I definitely think my favorite pose is a back bicep for physique. And then probably my least favorite would probably be ab thigh, just because my legs need to keep up with the rest of my body.
Well, and it's such an awkward pose too, where it's like you can't make it look natural and like elegant,
No.
really. Yeah, that's definitely one of the hard ones. And I mean, if I ever competed, my back would be my favorite too. Not because my back is the best, but just because that's the one pose where you can let your smile down, and you don't have to be smiling all the time. Because so many people don't understand that. I mean, your jaw muscles are going to be the most sore thing after these shows because of your constant smiling. But how long do you think it took for you to sort of get used to that? Like you said, you're flexing everything at the same time, and it's for an extended period of time. And if you were to take someone from the general public on the stage, they'd probably last a couple of seconds doing that. But sometimes you're on stage for minutes at a time. How long into your journey before you think you develop that, overall conditioning that's required in the sport? Because that's probably the hardest thing about posing for a lot of people.
Mhm. I don't even think I had that even before my competition. After my first competition, I was on stage with a girl, and they kept making us go back to the same poses over and over. So you'd hit the pose, go back, and they wanted you to hit it. And they probably did it 4 times. And I was exhausted. I wasn't expecting it at all. So definitely, I think it's ever changing and still ongoing. Um, my coach will make me hold a pose for a couple of seconds now, or more than a couple of seconds, at least 30 seconds, just so that you know the feeling of, if you have to keep holding that pose, that you're able to do it and you're not the one shaking on stage. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's just so much practice that a lot of people just don't understand. They just think that, oh, they just must go on the stage and wing it. It's like, no, this is a whole set routine and everything. And when you're walking on that stage, I mean, what is that feeling like for you, knowing that, I mean, you've worked months upon months on this physique and you finally get to show it off? What is that feeling like?
it's crazy. My first competition, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. There's no way I'm going to be able to stand in front of a huge crowd in a bathing suit and pose. But it's just like a kind of switch that clicks on, and you can't see anyone, but you can hear everyone because of the stage lights. And all I remember was thinking, like, just look up, just look at the lights. But it was actually exhilarating, and I just felt so accomplished after. So I think that's the feeling that I tell everyone, because they say I don't have the confidence to do that. I said, you'll be amazed of what you can accomplish as soon as you're actually up there, because it's like a switch. It just turns on and it's game mode, and it just changes.
I would always bring it up to sometimes when I'm going on the mound against a really tough team. You know, my legs would be shaking in the dugout and stuff like that, and I wouldn't think I could make it out there. And then as soon as you make it out there and throw that first warm up pitch, you're absolutely fine. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing what the human body can really do when it gets down to it. But when you're on stage, does time seem to slow down, or does it seem to speed up, or is it sort of a mixture?
I feel like it kind of just disappears. I found that people were like, "Oh, how did that feel?" I was just like, "I don't remember." I'm just like, it happened. It while you're doing it, you're just praying for that you're hitting the pose right. But then as soon as it's over, you're like, "Oh, that's it. Like that's all that you needed us to do." And I want to go back out there. And I feel that time just kind of it goes by so fast, and that's why just for definitely I would just suggest for everyone just to enjoy every single moment. Like I'm so glad that I had a group of friends with me that I wasn't just by myself. I had people to enjoy it with, and if I was nervous, I could talk to them, and it was just a overall great experience. And I just say just enjoy, and every moment of it is amazing. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it goes by quick. I mean, I always compare the fact that like for my baseball things, I mean, I'd be out there for a couple of hours and like 20, 30 times a year. And, you guys are on stage maybe once or twice a year. And, just and you go through so much more than I ever did. But another myth and stereotype that I love to bust is that, so many people do not understand that look that you present on stage is not sustainable. You're not going to be able to keep that look 24/7. And I think it's mainly because of shows like Biggest Loser and stuff where people go on and they lose, that much weight and they're able to keep it off. Some of them are. And then people just look at bodybuilding and they're just like, oh, hey, they must just be the same thing because they work even harder than that. But they don't understand that you've manipulated your body through, all the exercise and diets and I mean the water manipulations, all the stuff that goes into being a bodybuilder. But what was that like for you when you first realized, like, hey, this look that I present on stage, it's not sustainable? And has it gotten easier for you as your career's gone on to accept that?
it was definitely a shock after my first competition, because I don't know if I did it properly where I should have, slowly got into the foods. I just went into a carb overload, and I wasn't prepared for that. It was a huge shock, and it's a huge mental thing as well because you spend, half of a year on prep, or that's how long I spent. I was 6 months on prep, slowly changing my body and, just making sure I had the diet right to see how well I would do on the diet and cardio, and how things affected me and how other things didn't affect me. And that's one thing that I wasn't prepared for was the effects after the competition, because you go in so lean and the look is incredible, but to sustain that afterwards is very difficult. And it's kind of a mental game as well, because you can watch that go away and overnight essentially. I wasn't prepared for that, so definitely this time around, try to wean myself back, keep the same diet, but introduce carbs slowly back into my diet, just so it's not a huge shock. But I feel like most people should know that to maintain that body fat percentage is extremely hard, and definitely to gain more muscle, you gotta be more muscular and put on that fat and turn that fat into muscle. So I don't mind having a thicker look. I've always been bigger than the rest of the girls, so for me to stay around like 160 to 170 in the off season, that's totally fine for me. And a little fluffy, but mind you, most people don't understand. Like I'm 5'6", so that is a little heavy for someone who's 5'6", but most girls don't. They would ask me how much I weigh, and I'd be like, "Oh, probably like 160." Like I usually don't weigh myself. I tend not the weight. The scale doesn't really matter to me. So when I say I weigh 160, they're absolutely blown away. I said, "Well, I'm carrying so much muscle that I can look the way I look and weigh this much, and it's totally fine." So it is a mind game, but I feel like most people should know that once you're done the competition, to maintain that is very, very hard. And to be better, you have to put on that muscle mass.
This is the one reason I find this sport so interesting is because it's the one sport where you'll get women to actually admit their weight. No other excuse ever. So I've always found that funny. But no,
Yeah.
it's just again, that dedication that it takes. And I always say it's just like starting your own business. I mean, you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, unfortunately, those two do go hand in hand. But let's be honest, too, you're not the average looking woman. So I always make the comparison like if you were dressed the way that you are right now and you walk outside, you sort of become like a mini celebrity just because people, whenever they see something that they're not familiar with, they're sort of just like, oh, hey, that's interesting. And, it draws their attention. What has that been like for you? Has it been an easy adjustment for you to just realize that you are going to get a lot more people's attention, or is it something that you've struggled with? What's your overall experience with it been like?
For me, it's just been weird, I think. I've never used to be the person that people like point at and stuff like that. So for me, for people to be like, "Oh, like you obviously go to the gym," I have a hard time being like, "Oh, do I actually look that different?" I'm taken back by it because I don't see myself as I think I look normal, but when you compare myself to your average girl, it's like, okay, maybe I do have a little bit more muscle. So that's one thing I've had to get used to is people commenting and being like, "Oh, well." It even happened to me the other night. Someone just was like, "Well, you obviously don't go to the gym," being sarcastic, and then they ask you all these questions, like, "What do you work out? What do you do? What do you eat?" And I think that's the thing that I've gotten. That shocked me the most is how many people just confront you about that, and just start asking you all these questions. And I'm still learning, and I still don't know much either. So I always make sure I tell people, I'm like, I don't actually fully know what I'm doing. I do what I'm told by my trainer and my coach, and I just hope that I can bring the best package I can. But yeah, it's crazy to just be that person that obviously people look at, and they multiple times when I go to the gym, there's these older ladies, and it does melt my heart because they say, "Oh, I'm like your arms are my goals. Like that's absolutely incredible. Like you look amazing. You look so strong." And it warms my heart because they realize that it's hard work that you're putting in. So it's definitely been a weird adjustment, and I'm still not used to it. I still come home and I'm just like, "Oh my god, what happened to me today?" And but it definitely gives you a little bit of a confidence boost, and it's one thing to get really used to of people noticing, especially now that it's summertime and you're not in hoodies and you're in tank tops and t-shirts, and everyone can see your progress now. So and now's the time where everyone starts to change and show how lean they can get and all the muscles. So
You say it's summertime now, but being in Minnesota, we're due for probably at least 3 or 4 more snowstorms before this thing ends out. It's always delayed for us every time. Every time we jinx, and you just jinx it right there now for all of
yeah.
us because no, because every single time I always say like, oh, the snow might finally be over. A week from now, we'll probably have like 10 inches of snow on the ground coming, and it'll be like -10 degrees for like a full week or something like that. So I never count my blessing. When you're from this area, you never count your blessing. So I'm not even going to acknowledge that you said that it's summertime yet because, I'm knocking on wood right now. So hopefully the weather gods were not angered by that too much. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, yeah, just getting used to that. But at least during the winter, I mean, you can at least wear a hoodie and stuff like that, so you don't have to get recognized, as much, and it's a little bit more of a distraction. And that is incredible. But the number one thing that I always say is the most important thing in this lifestyle. I don't care what anyone says, is sleep. No one ever talks about it, and if anyone disagrees with me on that, I always tell them pull an all-nighter and then go and try to work out and tell me what happens. Did that twice in college, and both times I lasted halfway through and I just said, screw this, I'm going back to get some sleep. What does your sleep schedule look like? Because I mean, so many people. I mean, I've had night owls on this podcast. I have people that go to bed at like 7 o'clock at night, and it really just does differ from person to person. And people, some people can function on 8 hours, some people can function on six, some people need 10 hours. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
I definitely think it varies. I cannot function off of really anything less than 5 hours. I find I definitely need a good 8 hours of sorry. Yeah. I definitely need like a good 8 hours of sleep. Not to function, but because I work out in the evenings. I work out 5 o'clock at night every day. So for me to make it to 5 o'clock, I need those 8 hours to make it through my workout, or everything just feels heavy. I don't want to do cardio. I lose motivation completely. Getting sleep, it's totally on you on when you want to go to bed. I always make sure that if I take pre workout, I take it so that I have enough time that I know I'm going to fall asleep. Um, but I definitely need eight. I think 8 hours. I could probably function off of five, but I wouldn't be very nice at the gym. I don't think I would. I find my workouts are horrible if I get a lack of sleep.
Oh, yeah, that's the biggest difference, and I mean, yeah, for me, yeah, that's the great equalizers if you don't get that amount of sleep, and I've always said, though, one of the best feelings, though, is if you get that a hard workout in, then you get that proper amount of sleep, you wake up feeling like a superhero, and I mean, that's one of the best feelings ever, but, I mean, let's be honest, cardio is my trigger word, I hate it more than life itself, and when I say cardio, I mean, like, actual running. Like I did last night, I could walk on the treadmill for 80 minutes and, just get that's totally fine with me, but just the running aspect, but unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you kind of sign a deal with the devil basically that guarantees that you have to do cardio at least during your prep at least. But what is your relationship like with cardio?
I used to love cardio. I played rugby and field hockey, and I was a sprinter. I was one of the fastest people on my rugby team. But then with my heart condition, and stopped doing cardio, and just went to the gym probably for maybe like 2 years. I didn't do cardio. A little bit here and there, going for a walk or something. And then as soon as I had to do cardio for my first prep, I was like, excuse me. I'm like, I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I don't even remember the last time I ran or exerted myself that much. But it's a love hate relationship. I feel amazing after I do it, but during it, if I don't have my phone with Netflix or my phone with music, I'm counting the minutes, and it's the longest half hour of my life. But I've learned to just accept the fact that if I don't do it, I'm not going to get where I need to be. So it's been a journey of trying to accept it, and I usually pout my way to the stairmaster or the elliptical. But eventually, just the burning all that fat off and just seeing how much sweat you're breaking out too. It's relieving afterwards, but during it's horrible.
Oh my god! And if I don't have a movie running either, I mean, there's no way you're gonna get me
Yeah.
on that treadmill because it is ridiculous. But unfortunately, it's good for your heart. Well, and do you have to sort of slow things down because of your heart condition, or are you limited at like what you can do cardio wise?
Um, I try to
Obviously,
just do.
I don't think you should be like dead sprinting for like half an hour or something like that. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, usually I try to stick with the Stairmaster just because it's continuous, and as long as I do something continuous for the amount of time that I need to do cardio for, I'm fine. But as soon as I start to do the hit stuff, like 20 seconds hard or 40 seconds, and you're sprinting, that's where it really gets a little bit uncomfortable for me. So I usually try to hold back on that, but try to push myself as much as I can. And then if it just happens, I usually have to take like a minute, slow down, readjust, and then go back to it. So it was just trying to find out what like I know I can't do the treadmill. I None of my cardio is done on the treadmill. Hurts my shins too much, and it's just too much on my heart. So the elliptical and the stairmaster are my go-to's.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never done Stairmaster myself because, I'm just, plus now that it's getting a little bit warmer and I'm not jinxing myself by saying that, I am going to go on bike rides because those are my favorite. But yeah, that's my form of cardio that I really actually enjoy. But on top of all this that we talked about, I mean, the coronavirus, it's one thing that's impacted our lives in more ways than we could ever imagine. I mean, with gyms shutting down and all the stuff that happened. What was your journey like through this COVID? Because I mean, especially being a bodybuilder, the moment the gym shut down, I was like, oh my God, that's bodybuilders crack basically. I mean, how do they live without it? So how did you function during this pandemic?
Um, it was an adjustment and a half. I was lucky enough that my work didn't shut down at all. So I continued working straight through COVID. And then our gym was one of the last gyms to shut down and one of the first to open. So it was kind of nice, but it was still shut down for around 4 months. But it was just at that time where I had made the commitment that, hey, I wanted to take a year and build, and then do another competition. And then, of course, as soon as we agree to that, of course, COVID hit, and you're just like, well, what now? Do you just stop? Do you keep building? But it was kind of nice. A group of my friends, three of us, we went to the university here in Nanaimo, and they have this huge set of stairs. It's like 300 sets of stairs or something. And we just did circuit training, and we did that. We made sure that at least 3 days a week we met up, and we kept our 6 feet distance, and we would just do our little circuit training there for an hour. And that was lots of cardio too. So we just kind of made sure we were maintaining whatever we all had, and just to keep busy, because there's no way I would have been able to find the motivation to do anything at home. I'm the type of person that gets distracted by something so easily. If I'm doing push-ups at home, then I'll start to clean something or other. So it was nice to just have that group of girls that made we all made each other accountable to go meet up, do a workout, go for a walk, even if it was just for an hour. And we even went when it was raining too. So it it was an adjustment and a half um, for me. It it was one thing that messed up my routine, which I'm a routine person. So I just started doing a lot of cardio. I guess I started running a lot, running around some trails with my dog, just trying to keep active and keep busy, and not eat as much because that's one thing I do when I'm home alone. If I'm home alone, I'll just get bored and I'll just eat. So it definitely, I'm glad that our gym stayed open as long as possible, and as when they were told to shut down, they shut down, and then when they knew that there was a possibility to open, they opened up, and it was great. So I think there was only four months where we didn't have the gym, so which was a struggle, but we somehow made it through.
Now, I'm gonna get angry asking this question because I probably know the answer, but was it true that the Canadian government actually gave you guys like $2,000 a month for like 5 months or something?
Yeah, but you had to not be working.
Oh,
I think it was called CERB or something. So I couldn't apply for it since I was working full time. But yeah, if you were not working due to COVID, you got $2,000 a month. It's called CERB, and yeah, but I guess you had to pay taxes on top of that. So some people weren't prepared for that. But yeah, so all these people were they were making more money on Serb than they were at work. So then once they decided to open, they're like, well, we're just not going to go back to work and we're going to stay on this because we make more money. So,
yeah. I mean, yeah. Those people made more money in a month than I've been paid by the U.S. government the entire damn pandemic. So that just goes to show you how things are going. But I don't want to get into too much in that. I don't want to be put on a website somewhere. But
yeah.
two of the questions that I also love to ask, every guest before we wrap things up is that, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Ah, that's a tough question. I know my mom would love me to say get rid of heels for women competitors because she thinks it's absolutely a gong show that women have to wear heels. But that's a tough question.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, whether it comes to like
Yeah.
making the judging more fair and not just like because I always tell people like if you were to compete in shows in back-to-back weeks, one show they might want you a little bit more leaner, one the other show they might want you a little bit more fuller. That's my personal.
Yeah, it's so hard with judging because, it all depends who shows up to judge and who's on stage with you. Sometimes it can be political, and like as much as I would wish that it wouldn't be political, I don't even know if that's even possible. But I guess that would be one thing I could change is for the judging to just have, you know, exact criteria because ever since bodybuilding has started to happen is it's evolved so much. If figure is the new bikini and physique is the new figure, it just keeps evolving, and you got to get bigger, you got to get leaner. So I guess that would be one thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with that too. And I mean, if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Definitely, I want to be able to get my pro card. I know that could take years, and I'm willing to put in the effort to definitely get there. I definitely want to have more shows under my belt, and have more knowledge over the whole bodybuilding, nutrition wise, posing wise. Just because I do enjoy helping others as well. I get lots of girls who ask me to help me with their posing, and I help them as much as I can. I just do let them know that other than my coach, I'm mostly self taught. So, you know, I may not be doing it right, but definitely to have more knowledge about posing, nutrition, and to have some medals under my belt for sure would be nice.
Hey, that's there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. But before we wrap things up, too, I mean, one thing that I always find fascinating about this pandemic too is that so many people seem to have a little bit more free time, and that's the number one excuse that trainers I hear complain of is that their clients say like, "Oh, I want to get in shape, I just don't have the time." And if you use that excuse now, I want to know what's going on in your life. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, "Hey, now that I have so much more free time, I really want to get started getting in shape," what's the best piece of advice that you would give someone just to get started? Because I find for so many people once they take that first step in the gym, it is so hard to walk out without getting a workout in.
hmm I definitely, there's been lots of people who come up to me and be like, "Oh, I'm just not losing weight. I'm not doing, you know, I've been working out for a week and I'm not seeing those changes." But I definitely feel like they need to commit for at least a month and take before and after pictures. That's one thing that I will live by immensely is if you just go by what you keep seeing in the mirror every day, you're not going to see those little changes. So take a picture before you start, and in a month later, if you keep with your program and keep with your healthy eating and training, you'll definitely see those changes. But anyone can say, "Hey, I have time. I want to go to the gym." But it's actually getting to the gym and getting the workout in. And I find if you know someone who can help you train, even if it's just a friend, not necessarily a trainer, just to get you to learn those movements, because you could go to the gym and be at the gym for 2 hours and you might not even done anything though. So finding someone who can just help you get past that process. I'm someone who I love working out with other people. I get motivated to work out when I work out with other people. I find it very hard to work alone. So just finding someone who has the same drive and same goals as you to get you, and not only you hold yourself accountable, but to help them hold yourself accountable to that goal.
Which I'm the exact opposite of you. If anyone tries to work out with me, stay the hell away from me. Basically, that's just my time where I can de-stress and
Yeah.
be with my thoughts and just be alone and stuff like that. So I've tried to work out with other people, and for me, I just get angry and I'm just like, okay, this is the one time where I shouldn't have to like be worrying about. So yeah, I'm the exact opposite where it's like, yeah, don't even look at me, don't even acknowledge me when I'm working. But like if I do have people like come up and talk to me, that's fine. But like normally, I just work out. I had to move back in with my parents because of COVID, but they have a decent setup downstairs, so yeah, I'm just down there and I got my headphones in. But yeah, that's awesome. And again, everyone, the advice that I would give, even though I hate it, is just start walking. Even though I hate saying that, it's probably the best thing that you can do. But again, so and if you were to give a shout out to anyone on the podcast, who would you want to give a shout out to?
I would definitely want to give a oh, there's so many people. Definitely my coach and my trainer. I train at Dolly's gym here in Nanaimo, and my coach Pat. He's the one who got me into bodybuilding. So I definitely would have to let him know that I wouldn't have been able to know my potential if it wasn't for him. And my trainer Wiseman, who works at Dolly's gym, uh, pushes me to the point where basically every leg day I cry, which is a good cry. It's a good cry, but and I go and I still come back, so it's definitely good. But like all my friends and my boyfriend and stuff, they if it wasn't for them, I definitely wouldn't be able to be where I am today and keep pushing through without their support.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the last leg day I did a time under tension leg day, and I took 3 steps from my bed and I almost fell over. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Where you're just like,
hmm
God, I absolutely hate it. But again, everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. And everyone, buyer beware. You will get inspired. Get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies. But again, Dana, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Well, again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.